studying today is not printed in the bulletin, in the booklet.
Yeah, that's true.
And therefore, I have prepared a sheet with verses 25 through 32. And so I will ask each one of you to take one of those.
That happens a lot.
Yes.
I think it's because of space.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. But in any case, we have the rest of it now, so we can read the second half of this parable, because it has two halves, and we often forget the second half. So much attention is paid to the first. So let us start. Does anybody want to read this, or should I do it?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter what it is.
Well, if somebody will volunteer to read the second half, I'll read the first half.
Okay.
All right. Jesus is speaking. This is scripture, Luke 15, 11 through 24. And then the second half is Luke 15, 25 through 32. Actually, yeah, it's 32. It says 33, but that's wrong. Then Jesus said there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me." So he divided his property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country, and there he squandered his property in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, "How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare? But here I am, dying of hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put him on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet, and get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate." Now, who will read the second part? Carol, will you read the second part?
Now his older son was in the field, and when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. And he summoned one of the servants and began inquiring what these things might be. And he said to him, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he has received him back safe and sound.' But he became angry and was not willing to go in. And his father came out and began entreating him. But he answered and said to his father, 'Look, for so many years I've been serving you, and I've never neglected a command of yours, and yet you have never given me a kid that I might make merry with my friends. And when this son of yours came, who has devoured your wealth with harlots, you killed a fatted calf for him.' And he said to him, 'My child, you have always been with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to be merry and rejoice, for this brother of yours was dead and has begun to live, and was lost and has been found.'"
This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Thanks be to God.
Yes. I'm going to ask you to do something. I'm a middle school teacher. So one of the things we learn is don't spend a lot of time talking, let the kids do something. Do I have something on my nose?
No.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give you each a card. And I'll pass them all out. I presume I have enough cards. They're sticking together. Everything sticks together. And what I would like for you to do on these cards is I would like for you to write down the main sin committed by the younger son and the main sin committed by the older son. in as few words as possible. I'd like for you to take a few minutes to do this. Does everyone have something to write with, or can share something to write with? I can lend a pen and a pencil.
Here's a extra pen if you want to read.
Here's a pen.
You need a pen, Jim.
Here's a pencil. Let me see if we've got, yes, got it. There you go. Here's a pencil. Did everybody get one of these? So. What, the main sin committed by the younger son and the main sin committed by the older son.
Excuse me. Oh.
When everyone's ready, if you'll look at me, and then I'll know. Or look up, anyway. I'm not gonna make you write anything else. This is the whole thing. There is no test. That's the constant whine you hear in middle school. Is this gonna be on the test? And the answer is always, yeah, maybe.
No comment.
Is everyone pretty well finished? All right, well then, here's what I don't want you to do now, is we're gonna do what's called a pair share. And I want you to get in groups of 2, and I want each one of you to tell the other person what you think, what your answer was. You tell them what your answer was, and they tell you what their answer was, and then I'm going to go around and ask each person to tell me what their partner said was the answer. That's called a pair share.
Selfish. In short, requiring his share, and then leaving. The other brothers did not accept it.
Yeah, I said questions from behaviors.
Okay.
You want to try to go so you can.
Yeah, you can take your partner's card so you can remember what it said. That's what I would do.
Okay. We figured that out.
The 6th graders have to be told. The first time, anyway. That's like I used to let them write. I told them they could get one of these cards.
Right.
And when they came to the exam, if it wasn't a state exam, which is fixed, if it came to my exam, anything, they could bring that card with them and write on it anything they wanted to help them remember for the test. And of course, I taught history, so there's a lot of stuff. And they would get through it and write everything and they'd bring it in real tiny. Can we bring magnifying? Surely, you can even bring microscopes, whatever you want. And they have all this stuff written out. they would, almost every year, someone would come to me and say, Mr. Wayne, after all of that writing it down, I knew it, so I didn't have to look at the card. And I said, gee, who would have thought that?
Well, that was a slick trick.
I will have to say it's not my trick.
Oh,
They did that to me too. Us teachers have been around for a long time, so we know what we're doing.
Spend some time with Mary. Yeah, we spent some time together. I walked over to it.
Is everyone pretty well finished, or can we come back to order now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna start over here and go around this way, and I'm gonna write your answers on these sheets of paper with a marker I finally found. And, we'll just talk about them as we go through, and that's what this lesson is gonna be mostly like, okay? So, would you start?
Okay. The first son, the son that left, lost what was given to him.
Lost, now you're telling your partners
Right, that's correct.
was given, all right? And,
Selfish.
He
He
was-
was very selfish.
is that what you said?
Yeah, he said,
What he said? Okay, and, all right, now what did she say was about the older son, which was the second one?
Questioned his father's behavior.
And what did your husband say?
he didn't accept his
Didn't accept his father.
father's behavior.
Okay, so that's good. All right, we'll go down, Sue.
Steve's response was the youngest son's sin was greed. I want it now. And the older son was for not forgiving his younger brother.
And, what did she say? What did Sue say?
The first son did not respect his father.
Okay, and the younger son, older son?
Second son, disrespect for his father by not forgiving the younger brother.
So that's the first two people, and there's what they wrote, said, written rather messily, but I'm in a hurry. Now, Sue, what did you and your partner?
That's Carol.
Oh, okay.
It's Carol, that's Carol, excuse me, Carol.
Well, Maggie and I both pretty much came up with the same word for the
Okay,
younger son. Is it entitled, felt entitled,
entitlement,
is selfish.
and selfish. What about the older brother?
Who felt he had exactly the same thing,
Same thing, entitled,
and jealous. Maggie's word is jealous.
selfish, and jealous. Sounds good. Next, two.
Okay, my partner's was wanting too much too soon or greed. That was the oldest son.
That was the first son?
The oldest, yes.
The first son is the younger son.
Yeah.
Oh,
He
this
is
is
the
the oldest son.
Wanting too much too soon.
Greed.
Mm?
And the youngest was anger.
It's just the opposite.
Just opposite, yeah, actually.
Okay, and what did your partner say?
We're about the same thing.
Oh, same thing. Okay, I'll just put a,
Well, did not use his share wisely and squandered his money.
okay,
And,
squandered.
jealousy, resentfulness.
And for the older son?
We're all very close.
All right, so we have those two. Here's another two we can put here.
That's it.
And that's everybody. So we've got all these answers. And so let's look at, and you'll notice how similar they are.
Yeah.
You know, that tremendous amount of them is greed. And when you go back to Aristotle, he said that there were 4 natural virtues and 3 theological virtues. The natural virtues are justice, prudence, temperance, and fortitude. That means these are natural virtues because you can arrive at the fact that they are necessary if people are going to live together by reason alone. People say, well, people who don't have a God cannot possibly have a moral life. It's not true. The Greeks had gods who were silly. Have you read Greek mythology?
Oh, yeah.
They were either vicious or silly. If you tried to erect your morality on what Zeus and Hera and the rest of them did, you would have a really terrible place to live. So the Greek philosopher says, here are 4 things that we can work out by reason. And the Christians agreed. These 4 things are natural virtues: prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude. Temperance does not mean abstaining from alcohol. Temperance means controlling your emotion to the appropriate level for the situation. They also said that there were 3 theological virtues, and Paul told us what they were: faith, hope, and love. And these guys have these. They are not temperate. They do not control their emotions and their feelings. They are not prudent. They don't think, especially the younger one, doesn't take thought for the future. He just spends his money wildly until it runs out. The older son is not temperate because he allows his anger to go. And he's not just. He has lost nothing. When his father says, everything I have is yours, he's speaking literally. If you ask your father to, among the Hebrews, if you ask your father to divide the inheritance between you, he did, and that was permanent. He could not come back and ask for anything more. If he got anything more, it would be simply because his father was generous to him. Solely generosity. So the older son rather, had no complaint. He had lost nothing. And yet his anger and his lack of love for his brother led him to call out and not want to celebrate his brother's return. Just as the younger son's lack of love for his father and brother led him to think, well, I'm just going to take my money and go off and not pay any attention to my obligations. You might have read in the book, the older brother got 2 shares to the younger brother's 1. That was because he was responsible for his mother and his sisters. So the older brother got a share for himself, a share for his mother and his sisters, or any other dependent people in the household would fall into that. He would have to take care of them. The younger brother got a smaller share, but had none of those responsibilities. So what we're looking at here is the fact that people are not caring for one another. Jesus said it best, you shall love the Lord your God all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And the trick is you forget Jesus is God. And when he says you shall love your neighbor as yourself, he's not giving you a suggestion. That is a commandment. And if you look at people like this, they're obeying it. They are loving their neighbor as themselves, and they treat their neighbor badly because they don't love themselves. They see their own inadequacies and lacks, and they assume inadequacy and lack in the others. We have, as Christians, go to God not just to forgive our sins, but help us understand that until we turn ourselves over to God, to Christ, we are never going to be able to get rid of all the stuff that's pulling us down, that's making us miserable, that's making us difficult to live with. We call the process by which you are saved justification. Justification is instantaneous and permanent. You cannot, one of the chief tenets of the Reformed religion is you cannot fall out of the hand of God. So when you are saved, you're saved. There's no second time. That's why we Presbyterians don't have as many revivals, because you can't be saved a second time. You've already been saved. He doesn't have to do it. The revival is not to save you again. The revival is to remind you that you have been saved and to bring you back to that sense of enthusiasm you had when you were saved. The other thing is that we do treat other people as we treat ourselves. If we are selfish, we will treat other people selfishly, and we will assume that they are selfish as well. If we are proud, we will assume other people are proud. If we are lazy, we'll assume other people are lazy. You know, all of those things. Folks, when God says something, it ain't a suggestion, right? The ruler of the universe says, love your neighbor as yourself. You're going to do it. And when you don't love your neighbor well, it is in fact certainly a sign that you don't love yourself well at all. So here are two sons who don't love each other, who disdain each other. The younger son is thinking of the older son as a stick in the mud, and he's going to get more money than I am when Dad dies anyway. And I want to go away and get away from this out of this farm. I don't want to be a hick anymore, you know. And so he's going to go off and have fun with his friends for a while. And then the younger son is sitting there. His brother has gone away. He's had a terrible time. They must have known that he had gone to a country which was suffering from a famine. And yet his older brother is still full of resentment. Would you resent your older brother or sister if they were stuck in a country with famine? Or would you do the best you could to help them out? I think most of us would do the best we could to help them out. But these two, it doesn't say much for the father's raising. It's just like Abraham and his sons and Isaac and his sons. They didn't do a very good job, did they? Sometimes you look at it. But the point of the whole parable is this: they have lost the theme that God set in Genesis when he looked at the world and said, it is good. They have lost the ability to see the goodness in themselves and the goodness in others. And that is what Jesus is telling us in this parable. He's telling us not just to be nice to your brother. He's telling us to be nice to all people. He's telling us to care about the world around us and to see the goodness in others. You know, the younger son was adventurous and looked down on the older son. The older son was persistent. He was and dutiful, and those are good things. But he looked down on his brother and had contempt for him. You know, and this is not the way to build a family. So this is what. So I'm assuming, by the way, that all of you have read the lesson, or if you haven't, you will when you get through here. Okay? Because I'm not going to teach you the lesson. I'm going to teach you what I have learned from the reading, and that's what I'm doing now. Now, what does any of you have to say? I've had my talk. You talk. You aren't sixth graders. I didn't get immediate babble.
Well, there are many passages, especially in the New Testament, about loving your brother. And that specifically says if you have something against your brother, you need to forgive. In so many words.
Yes, Jesus said, if you have something against your brother, go, and you're going to the altar. It's the Sabbath, and you're going to the altar to make your offering. Stop. Go to your brother. Get it straight before you come before God with those bad thoughts in your heart. And that's exactly, you're exactly right. This is another time he's telling us, we need to get, you remember, I remember, some of you may be old enough to remember, those signs made of corrugated iron that were set along the roads that said, get right with God.
Oh, yeah.
There was a man who went around all around the southeast making those signs and putting them up beside the roads. And of course, by now, most of them have rotted away and don't exist anymore. But they were, I remember as a young boy, when we traveled from Virginia to North Carolina to visit my grandparents, I would see these signs, and I always thought that was so interesting. I wonder who did it. But we need I sometimes think we need some more signs like that.
The thing that struck me when I read this lesson was we really haven't learned our lesson. I mean, this is so prevalent in the world today.
Oh, yeah.
that we just really haven't learned our lessons.
Yeah. It's very, very true. Think of the families that have been torn apart over inheritances.
Yep.
You know?
Just look at the royal family.
Yeah.
That's a prime example
Yes.
of this lesson.
Yeah. So our basic, I'm looking at the time to see here, we got 20 minutes. But I'm not going to take 20 minutes because I haven't got 20 minutes of things to say unless you can bring something else. So I just wanted to say that we therefore have a opportunity here to learn something about ourselves. To learn that what we see in others is often because we have those same qualities in ourselves. If you look at people and say, well, most of the people I know are selfish, then you may need to ask yourself, well, is it because I'm triggering selfishness in them by my own selfishness? If most of the people if everyone I seem to meet loses their temper, is it them or is it me? And we need to turn to God because we can't fix those things ourselves. God has promised that he will save us, and God's promise is sure. How he will do it, there's a lot of argument. The Methodists and the Presbyterians have tremendous differences over what they think is going to happen the minute on the day of resurrection. You know, the Methodists believe that at the day of resurrection, the process of sanctification will be automatically completed. The Presbyterians say, well, we don't know that. It may continue even after, so that you may continue to improve even after you have raised it. God is going to make you work through it because he wants you to understand. I agree with them, the Presbyterians. That's why I'm here and not at the Methodist Church. But, but can either one of us prove it out of the Bible? No. You know, it's the same evidence, for every evidence they bring out, we can bring out a piece of evidence, and the Episcopalians and the Lutherans can do the same thing, and the Catholics and the Orthodox can do the same thing. The main thing we need to look at is what God is commanding us to do. And what is he commanding us to do? Very clearly in this lesson. To love your neighbors, to care about the people around you, to try to be more loving and more caring. Because one sin that beset both of these brothers is they didn't care about each other. They didn't even care much about their father. They were, and as several of you said, they were selfish. And that's something we need to work on. Every one of us needs to think about things like that. Well, if anyone got something, a great piece of information that they would like to share with us, or even a minor piece of information they would like to share with us, anything.
Well, what about the father's behavior in this?
I think that well, first of all, we need to look at the fact that the father has not done a very good job of raising these two boys.
Well, now, wait a minute.
Huh?
I just speak as a parent. Sometimes you have no control. They
That-
end up being adults and have minds of their own.
Well, that is very true, and it's probably very likely as a person who has been a teacher but never a parent. You're probably got a better view of it than I am. But I will have
The
to.
thing of it is as a parent, you're not always right,
No.
but you make the best decisions you can at the time.
Yeah,
And if you're doing the best you can, then that should be an example for the child to follow.
It should.
Which, like Carol says, it doesn't always happen.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. The thing I was thinking about, the father is giving the younger brother his inheritance, which he didn't have to do.
Yeah.
The inheritance belonged to the father for as long as the father lived.
But
His problem was this: if I don't give this kid, he's going to stomp off in anger anyway, and he'll go off somewhere and starve to death without any money. Maybe if I give him this money, he'll be more responsible and wake up. Well, it didn't happen, but at least he tried. So, you know,
He could have came home sooner though.
he could have, it might have come to sooner, yes. And we don't know what happened with notice that the parable cuts off without giving a resolution about what did the older brother do. Did the older brother forgive his brother? Or did he stay outside and, I'm gonna take my ball and go home, type of thing.
well, it is a parable.
It is.
And in parables, there is no answer.
That is true. That's
You
true.
have
It's
to-
not, that is the difference between a parable and a fable. In the fable, there's an answer. In a parable, there is no answer. It's just an example. Well, if anyone's not got anything else to say,
You know, that reminds me of when this lady I had home, I was her home health aide. And she would always say, "Oh, Miss Maggie, you know everybody." And I go, "No, I don't. Why would you say that?" I said, "You don't have to know people to speak to them. Just say hello and keep going. You don't have to stop and hold a conversation. You just be nice and pleasant. Just say hello or good morning. Let it go."
I think that's a lesson that a lot of people that need to learn, especially the people who are always in a rush. I think one of the reasons that modern life has become so unpleasant so often is because we're in such a rush and we forget what she said, that it doesn't take that long to
It
say
doesn't take that
hello, or to smile, or to say thank you, or to say you're welcome. It doesn't take that long, and it makes it so much more pleasant when you do that. Anyone else? Well, I hope that you've enjoyed this lesson. I don't know who is here next week, but
Me.
all right.
Do you wanna do the prayer?
Yes, let's look on page 2, and we will do the closing prayer together.
Dear God, when we are lost, help
Help us to be found and to find ourselves. Amen. Y'all have a good week.
Thank you.